please ask a question and not give a lengthy comment.
Thanks for your brilliant presentation, and thanks for your supporting Ukraine. I know that all your countries which you represent and personally you support us. I have one question to Sviatlana concerning the role of women on the future Belarus country, because I have also Belarus roots. My mother has Belarus roots, so we Ukrainians and Belarus, we have very, very, very tight historical, cultural and language ties. I think the women of Ukraine, maybe take some examples of your activity, and you can take some examples of Ukrainian women after the second act of aggression in the last year. What we have to do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a really great question. And Sviatlana, if you'd like to offer a couple of examples, and then Vice President, I would like to come to you also, if you'd like to offer a couple of examples for a future that doesn't involve a war in Ukraine, hopefully sooner rather than later.
So first of all, I have to say that Belarusian women and Ukrainian women have similar mentality, because we are from post-Soviet Union country. But I think that during the events in Ukraine and in Belarus, our women showed enough to have the equal rights with Ukrainian Belarusian men. So I think that we have to deep our inter-country ties, especially between women. Ukrainian women saw bravery of Belarusian women when we challenged the regime, when women sacrificed themselves, they put themselves into police vans to police not take men. I stood instead of my husband, and when the war has started, it were Belarusian women who launched anti-war movement and persuaded their husbands, their men, not to participate in the war. And of course, Belarusian women, first of all, they accepted Ukrainian refugees because they themselves were in exile, and they know how it is, to take one back, to grab your child and leave your country without anything. So we fully understand your pain is our pain. And of course now we see how brave Ukrainian women are in this war circumstances, how they are supporting the men, how they volunteering all the time. Your doctors, teachers who are teaching children in bomb shelters. So I think there will be no questions about the role of women in the future of our countries at all. So, and we achieve this gender equality much faster than maybe other countries.
Thank you. Madam Vice President, if you'd like to offer our friends in Ukraine one specific example of what they can do.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say that Russian women and Ukrainian women are both suffering the war. There is a war going on, but no one is going to profit. At the end of the day, women are always losing and are the losers in the conflict. I just came out of the main hall, the main conference, and I told there that one of the main reasons of the several crises, this is dismantling patriarchy. Because who is deciding on this war? It's men. Men decide whether to go on with war or not. They are the ones who decide whether we're going to invest more money in arms instead of investing more money in peace. It's always men who take these decisions. This is to say that here in this conference, where we are thinking about new rules, the new rules of the world order, it's important that women are included more in the decision-making process. I'm the first Afro descendant woman that is vice president in my country. before I was a social leader, a human rights defender. Now I'm vice president, and from my position, I'd like to say that it's important that women occupy powerful positions, because mostly it's men who have these powerful positions, and they decide on what will be done with our world. And we've seen what decisions have been taken in the past, devastating decisions. Nowadays, we are living a climate change because of decisions taken of an extraction economy, an economy that was based on accumulation, that was based on enslaving people, and an economy that is based on patriarchy to keep up. It has used different ways of suppression, structural racism, and this economy is destroying our planet nowadays. So it's mostly men who decide on our economy, who now will decide whether there will be a transitional energy policy or not, or they will just go on exploiting natural resources and then putting an end to our world. And it's also men who decide whether we will have healthy foodstuffs for our children, for our families, or whether, on the other hand, they prefer to engage in a war. So I fully agree. We, the women, we need powerful positions, even if it's with our bodies, with our children, with our families that have suffered absurd wars that should never happen and that have cost us dearly. So today we have to make decisions. We are doing that in Colombia. You're hearing more and more women voices and condemning sexual harassment, even condemning politicians that have committed acts of violence, politicians that don't respect, that don't value women. So it's on us now. We have to face these challenges, because here we are talking about security, but who defines security? And security for whom? What are we protecting? What has to be secured? We are securing an economic model that has kept most people in our society poor, marginalized. We don't want to sustain that. We don't want to have a model that will kill our world. We want to cherish our possibilities to reconstruct the world, to establish new international rules, a new international order that makes that life is in the center of everything. My big dream is that all women of this world get together and we urge humanity to work on the protection of life, protection of humanity, have a civilization where humanity is really in the center of everything. There is our chance, there is our power, and we can do that also with our differences. We don't need to be the same.
Madam Vice President, I'm so sorry, but I'm getting a lot of hands from up there, so I'm just going to blame it on them. I apologize. But I'm going to, since we got the room a few minutes late, I'm going to take that liberty of going over a little bit and add on to the existing question and then come to you, Madam President, about how can maybe a new transformed version of the WPS ensure also more transnational, feminist solidarity, if you'd like to touch upon that. And I'm going to give you a minute There are people, I mean, a German minute now, not an Indian minute anymore.
A minute
Yes.
to answer your question.
If you'd like to offer an example,
Oh, yeah,
or if you'd like to touch upon, because I think this is a very good question.
On the question, I wanted to offer a couple of thoughts, and I'll try to do that within a minute. So, the first thing is, once Ukraine wins this war, and it will win the war, it will be extremely important for women to lead the quest for justice, because the war will never be over without criminals and perpetrators facing justice. They need to face justice. In our case, it was women, whether as witnesses, whether as leaders of civil society, whether as prosecutors, making sure that justice prevails. So there are still, of course, a lot of cases where there has not been justice for the victims that and the crimes that were committed. But I think leading the war for justice, the battle for justice, is going to be extremely important for the women of Ukraine once you win the war. Secondly, it will be very important, as I said, for women, both in the government as well as civil society, to support rape survivors and to support victims. In our case, in our country, they have led this battle. And that's why women who were survivors, they really trusted the process, because there were other women that were supporting them. Thirdly, it will be very important once you win the war to have the kind of training for women. For example, we are providing training for the women of Ukraine in demining, because those who commit genocide, even after they leave mines behind, because they want to cause damage. They want to kill people even after the war. So we are training the women of Ukraine, and of course men as well, but it's mostly women, to make sure that they know how they can remove the mines in their livelihoods right after the war. And finally, as I said, strengthen civil society. It's so important for the democracy, but it's also so important for the WPS agenda. And elect more women in the parliament, because that means more money, more budget. For example, we've been doing what we call gender budgeting in our country. Every piece of legislation in our country, in the parliament, needs to go through a gender kind of lens, so that it also benefits gender equality. So these are my thoughts on how to involve women more and strengthen the role after Ukraine wins the war.
Very concrete suggestions, and I think they're very well taken. Thank you.